Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Retrospectives with my two people joining us. My man Kyle first. How you doing?
Hey, doing good.
Doing good. Glad to see you back once again. And now joining us again for the second week in a row, and who's going to be a regular on our show, Mike. How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, man? Everything's going great.
Going good. So today we're going to be talking about Styx's latest release, Crash of the Crown. Who would like to go first?
I'll defer to Kyle as usual. I like to hear Kyle's stuff.
Sure. So this album was kind of weird for me just because I like Styx. I'm not a huge Styx fan. I'm more along the lines of jam out to the hits, things like that. With that said, I really like their older material. And that's not saying I didn't like this album. It was just not totally for me, I guess. But what's interesting is it's a very well written album, in my opinion. The songwriting, I think everything about it is technically speaking good. So when it came time for me to review and rate it, it was a little difficult because even though I could recognize that the songs are very well written, and I think that fans of the band are going to enjoy this release, it really just wasn't for me. I don't see myself coming back to many of the songs in the future. There are a handful that I definitely will come back to. I think really two, maybe three of them. But overall, I think that if you're a fan of Styx, you're probably going to enjoy this album quite a bit. I do wish that it had some heavier hitting moments. It is definitely more of a mellow album for the most part. There's a lot of acoustics on here. Specifically, the intros of a lot of the songs start off acoustic. Then that's where I'll leave it for initial impressions.
Mike, what about you?
It started to grow on me. I had my favorite songs and the ones that I kind of felt were they were there, but they just didn't seem to stick with me. It kind of grew on me as I listened to it again and again, just to kind of get a better feel for it. And it definitely, I felt like I desired a little more big riff, kind of catchy tracks, kind of almost trying to revisit the old days of Use Your Illusion, or their original Styx 2, or their first album, or a lot of their classic work. And but then I am a fan of a progressive rock album that kind of doesn't necessarily have to have a ton of front facing guitar riffs and for you to kind of latch onto. It definitely does a lot with its kind of different instruments that are going on, different voices that are going on, group singing, kind of all that kind of thing. So I liked it. I didn't find a ton of tens here, things that I think I would blow my mind, but I definitely felt it was a pretty solid effort from a band who I thought really wasn't pumping out any kind of releases that were notable. So yeah, that's my initial release on it.
Cool. My initial thoughts, truthfully, going into a new Styx record, and I, full disclosure, I mean, I liked their hits back in the 70s. I mean, I'm sure they were one of the biggest bands out there, of course. And obviously with Come Sail Away, Renegade, things like that. And I was more familiar with their stuff from back then, of course. And not hearing any other albums, and not hearing any other songs really by them since from the early 80s until now. So going into this album was a bit of a dive into the deeper end of the pool, if you will. I was like, okay, I'm not sure what I'm getting into, but I'm going to try it anyways. And I got to say, there was definitely, I agree with more of what Kyle was saying. That's on the point of I really enjoy the hits that they've had, but going into this was very much let's see what they have to offer. And I liked what I heard overall. I mean, would I go back to some of them? Sure. Some of them over others, then yeah. But for the most part, though, I mean, I overall I enjoyed it for what it was. And I do have tickets to see them later this year, actually, when they're on their tour with Aria Speedwagon. So that's just a little plug right there. But I'm excited about that too. And Lover Boy is opening up. You can't go wrong with that. But it was overall, I liked it overall. It was a very good, solid record. And if for those of you who haven't heard it, I mean, I would get on it now. I mean, would I recommend it to someone? Yes. Bottom line, I would recommend it to someone. Let's jump over to the Wikipedia page for a second. But yeah, so I mean, overall, I mean, this is, we'll get into our track listing, our favorite songs in a second. But overall, I thought it was very, solid record overall. I mean, that's my initial impressions. I mean, do you guys should we go track by track? What are you guys thinking?
Well, I was gonna say, who we could all list our number one track off of it.
Yeah.
For me, it was like there's a number one track, with some close. I was just saying, like, what's the star of the show here? I mean, obviously, there's the one that they want you to say, which is, either like the ones that they do singles of. I mean, yeah, I don't know what everyone's number one song is.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, and I will agree with JT to an extent of would I recommend this album? Yes, mostly to a person that's already a fan of the band. I feel like if someone asked me, I want to get into Styx, this probably wouldn't be anywhere near what I would show them first. With that said, if someone is already a fan of Styx or even just the genre in general, like if they're into more progressive sounds, I would definitely just be like, yeah, definitely worth checking out. It might not be one of your favorite albums, but you might find something that you'll enjoy on it. And I think that you definitely would at that point if you're already a fan of it. But to get to Mike's point here, there are actually two songs on this album that I think are just straight 10 out of 10s that I put on, just into my daily rotation. That would be Our Wonderful Lives and Sound the Alarm. The other song I would consider, I think it might be the only other one that I gave around like a 9 out of 10 to. There are actually two. One was Save Us From Ourselves, which I thought was pretty good. And then The Fight of Our Lives. I thought that was a really good opener, but I think the problem is it set me up for something that the album ended up not being. Like it set me up for something like really epic and like big. And I feel like a lot of the songs didn't reach that. That's just for me. But I think that in terms of the two that I really liked, Our Wonderful Lives and Sound the Alarm, they're both more acoustic ballads, and they're probably some of the furthest away from that classic Styx sound on this record. But I really like them. I felt like the lyrics on this one, on those two specifically, felt very personal, and you could feel like the passion in them. Whereas I feel like a lot of the other lyrics on the album, the album has a very, let's just get out of the way, very medieval type sounding thing to it. I'm not the biggest fan of that. That may be why it didn't translate for me. I'm not a fan of like that medieval vibe. I never really have been, like the kings and the monsters, things like that. I think that's where it fell flat for me. But you don't really have that too much on these two songs, and I really like that. They're very personal sounding. So those are my specific standouts.
Mike, what do you got?
I was conflicted with this question to myself and to you guys. What was my favorite song? Now, Crash of the Crown has a weird vocal starting on it that kind of really, it left me scratching my head if there was a reason for it theatrically, or almost like a song going beyond just a song, but almost like, if I'm talking about drowning in the ocean, I'm going to make it sound like I'm stuck in the ocean, you know what I mean? Or like, or like grabbing onto that rope, like some people will actually emphasize with their voice what they're doing or what's happening in the song. And I almost kind of got that feeling when I watched the lyric video. Also, just in general, it's the only song of its kind, but it's my favorite song structurally. Its movements, its progressive kind of change ups, which I'm a huge fan of change ups. If anyone ever talks to me, like if a song is like, hey, here's your your star, your chorus, your bridge, whatever, and repeat, wash, rinse, repeat, done. I tend to like struggle with those types of songs on artistic level, but when a song kind of throws you for a loop with some different sounding parts and a progressive kind of feel to it, I tend to kind of latch onto those songs in a stronger way. So yeah, I would say Crash of the Crown, Save Us From Ourselves. I felt the first part of this album was the strongest. Kind of almost opposite of Kyle. Weirdly enough, I thought the first six to I say six songs where I was kind of like sitting pretty high, and then the last bunch of songs were kind of mixed up for me. Felt a little less attached to those songs, a little more to the front. 6 or 7 songs. So those 2 songs. I actually did really enjoy Sound the Alarm as well. So yeah, that's kind of how I was feeling on those tracks. How about you, Jay Tizzle?
Yo. So I gotta say, and as someone who is like who likes Styx enough to go see them, which I am later this year, for some reason to me, title tracks always stand out to me no matter what album they are. I've always liked every title track I've ever heard. Be it American Idiot, Toys in the Attic, you name it. Like I can go down a ton of different artists, and I love the title track. This one, Crash of the Crown, I really actually, when I got down to it, I was like, this were really, as a title track that I gravitated towards. Like I actually, with my second time listening to it, I went back to it actually, truthfully. And you're right, it does have that like the word that I forgot the words you were describing, Mike, but it does have those types of vibes and those feels to me personally. Like I'm not sure, and again, I'm not sure why title tracks just work for me. I mean, no matter whatever they are, they just do. It's just it's how it is, I guess. But I would say Crash the Crown definitely stands out to me as well. As probably my go-to, truthfully, because again, title tracks, they just work for me, as I just said. Sound the Alarm, I agree with you. That's a really solid track. And I gotta go along. So I agree with both of you in this case. The first half of the album, Mike, you point out it does have a strong, first side, if you will, first side of it too. But then, but truthfully, when I got down to the 14th track, Another Farewell, which is just a 26 second instrumental, I've always, back when we talked about ELO, I've always loved instrumentals on albums, whether it be from Metallica, whether it be from Electric Light Orchestra, or whatever. I've always loved talking. I've always loved instrumentals in general, just even if they're small, even if they're long, whatever, as long as it works. And to me, that 26 seconds it worked for me personally. I mean, because it's not just the words, it's not just the lyrics, the melodies. It's definitely it's just the music in general. I like that stuff personally. So I like Another Farewell as a kind of like an honorable mention type of thing. So, but that is me. Yeah, those are my initial impressions. I mean, like I said, so Crash of the Crown, Sound the Alarm, and I'll give like an honorable mention to Another Farewell, just the 26 seconds that I loved it quite a bit. So, but so, yeah, that's me though.
I'm gonna transition to this into our least favorites, just because I'm gonna be that guy. I did not like Crash of the Crown.
Oh no!
I have it literally written right here, like by far my least favorite thing on here. I knew we were all going to be divided on this one a little bit. I'm a big vocals can really kill a song for me, whether they're done purposefully to fit an atmosphere. It really threw it off right from the get-go with the vocals, and the transitions were a little weird to me. I do like that, it was going somewhere, the song. And that's one thing about this album that I can say as a positive for it is none of the songs felt dragged out or long. Like none of them overstayed their welcome. The songwriting's there. It's great. And I will say the redeeming quality of Crash of the Crown for me, I thought the synths were really good on it. But yeah, that one just really didn't do it for me. And then there was a couple other songs that fell flat, but like A Monster was one of them, just kind of felt like filler to me. And especially I think it would be more highly regarded in my book if it didn't follow such an epic album opener just to immediately go into kind of a boring mid-tempo acoustic intro song. Just weird. I will also disagree with JT on Another Farewell a little bit, just because I thought it was a pretty good instrumental. I wish it was slightly longer, and it just kind of didn't fit in that specific spot on the album. I didn't think that's another thing with this album that I noticed that kind of dragged it down for me a little bit, is a lot of the songs seem like they're there, but they don't seem like they fit in that specific spot. Like I already mentioned with A Monster, I feel the same way about this one. And I really liked Lost at Sea. I forgot to mention this one. I really liked Lost at Sea a lot, but it's only 38 seconds and I wish it was longer. And I felt that way about a lot of the stuff on here. Is it had things that were really promising to me, but then failed to deliver further on. And a lot of it, one of my biggest notes on this album is a lot of Beatles influence on here, like undeniably so on a lot of it. But there's also a lot of, and let's go back to the progressive rock side of things, a lot of it comes out sounding a little bit like Rush. There's also a song or two that come out sounding like, specifically Stream, sounding like Pink Floyd. So to me, this just kind of delivered a lot of Styx doing discount Beatles meets Rush meets Pink Floyd, which not a bad thing. Just something that I noticed. It did kind of like throw things off for me in certain parts, just because it's not really what I was looking for. But those are my biggest critiques of it. I think that and the group vocals did get kind of annoying after a while. I get it, like that's the classic Styx harmonies, which they work very well in when they're used properly, when they're not overdone. And I felt that in a lot of the songs here. I even noted it in the beginning, how much I loved that they were still doing like those harmonies. They sounded great. And then as it got like further on into the album, I was like, all right, we get it. It's these harmonies over and over. But really, those are my biggest critiques on the album. Overall, I think it's pretty solid. But going back to the Rush thing, the song To Those, lyrically and a little bit musically, it sounds like if you gave, and we talked about this a little bit with the Def Leppard album, it sounds like if you gave an AI just a bunch of Rush songs and said, write me a Rush song, that's what it would have got. The lyrics were such like, they felt like discount, like Neil Peart lyrics with musically just trying to be Rush a little bit, which I'll just go listen to Rush if I wanted that sound, you know?
I also got some Queen vibes off a couple of the songs. Yeah, like I think it was probably Crash of Crowns was like had a whole bunch of Queen kind of ending to it, even that kind of harmonized guitar. And I was looking at some of the YouTube Facebook or YouTube comments, which I hate looking at YouTube comments because it's like just people are just talking heads. They're just kind of, they're just spouting things, but there is some relevancy to like the stuff they say. Just not so much like I feel like it's so concentrated in its evaluation. Do I feel like they're copying off Queen? Like I wouldn't say that. I would say, like they are definitely feeling a theatrical, and that's something that I am a big fan of. I love theatrics. I love the dragons. I love the knights, the medieval thing. I mean, Styx 2 has a fugue in it from Bach. I mean, so I'm over there like, like literally, that's me. I'm that guy. So when I hear songs like that, when I hear a whole theme like that, I'm just like, I'm thrilled. So, to kind of play off what Kyle is saying, and I that's why I like hearing many different opinions about an album. Could Styx put a modern album with enough of a medieval kind of undertone to not overdo it to the average listener who's not necessarily huge on that sound? And that perfect balance or that delicate balance could be very tough to pull off sometimes, because you still have guys writing an album who are into something. There's Tommy Shaw. He's him and I think it was Dennis DeYoung. I think it was the guy who left in 2000s. He's been gone since 2000, and and Shaw has written some great songs, so it's not like the guy who really kind of was everything to the band is they're both gone, and Shaw's still there. So yeah, but I understand what you're saying. And actually my least favorite song was Coming Out the Other Side, and To Those, where actually that's where I kind of was falling off. And then that instrumental, like you were saying, is too short to get a real feeling, a vibe of like some kind of emotion. I liked it. It was pleasant. It wasn't bad, but then I needed a little longer to really gain an idea or an expression, rather than just kind of like, here's something that's going to lead into another track that's so short that you're probably not going to remember what it was trying to get across.
Yeah, and that's the thing though with that specific interlude. There was, I anticipated it to lead into Stream, and it really doesn't. It doesn't feed into it well, because it just stops, and then Stream starts with a completely different sound. It starts with a acoustic guitar that honestly sounds kind of out of tune, which I'm sure was the point, but it really bothered my ears. And that's Stream was also one of my least favorites. But yeah, that instrumental, I think it really need to be longer and have better placement.
Quick question for both of you. Would you say that, given that there's still like the majority of the original members of Styx are there, do you think that they, just out of curiosity, do you think there was like a lack of focus in general making this? Like in your opinion, I just want to ask that question. Would you say?
I don't think so.
Okay.
This album, you listen to it and it feels very focused. Like it sounds like they were all on the same page. They all knew what they wanted to do. Right. And yeah, Tommy Shaw is writer on most of the songs. But even looking at the writing credits, it's, there's still a lot of input from other people. I think it does sound focused. I don't get that vibe at all. Whereas like the Def Leppard album that we talked about recently was an example of a legacy act trying to do something different and not doing it well. I think this was more Styx just knowing themselves, knowing what they wanted to write, and all getting together to do it, which they do. And it's definitely a Styx album. I think if you were a fan of Styx and a fan of the band outside of the hits, I think this album is going to please those people.
I think so too. I just wasn't sure, because like I said, I'm not. I know their hits from the '70s and whatnot. I know about Dennis DeYoung leaving, all that stuff. But as someone who's like delving into it, I was like, I wasn't sure if this was like a group effort, or like, what I mean? Like I wasn't sure how like the band, in your eyes, the band might have interacted with it making this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say that, because there is a very big lyrical theme going on here, a story in a way, and sometimes when you're focused on the lyrical themes, it looks like majority of the album was written by Shaw and Evan Kovic. I can't even say that. Ivanovic. Yeah. So and the end, if you notice, is written by a little more of a mixture, and that's where I fell off. It's kind of interesting that the mixture of people kind of came at the time when I felt like a little more like confused by some of the consistency of the vibe and feeling of the album were kind of coming in at that point. And overall, just to mention, I felt I wasn't as huge on the vocals overall, even beyond Crash with the Crown. I felt the vocals weren't bad at all, but they just felt a little underwhelming. Maybe the singer's staying within his like a comfort range or zone or whatever. But it felt a little strained at time. It felt like there's more power kind of presence that could have come from his vocals that wasn't there, and it kind of caused some tracks I felt, in my opinion, to suffer from that lack of kind of ability to just real project out some of the parts where he kind of lets out a note, like the one where he was like where he says, do you know what it's like to be me, and you know what it's like to be free. It felt like you could tell he's much older and much more kind of out of that range of like ability to just kind of really belt out some of these parts, which is, it is what it is. It doesn't really superly hurt the album. It just it left me wanting more from that area, that I was kind of almost hearing old Styx songs in my head and alongside them, and thinking to myself, seems like it's just a little underwhelming. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I found myself kind of wanting more of the vocals, which I thought the vocals on the album overall, he's a great singer. I mean, well, we're talking about a band where they have multiple singers that all do lead vocals at different points. I would say most of them are great singers. I've never really been a fan of James Young's voice, which kind of shows on Crash of the Crown. I'm pretty sure that was him in the beginning. But I would have to agree, like we got to remember these guys they're older now. They're not going to be able to hit those notes. I mean, as evidenced by every band from the time, even a little bit later. I mean, look at Bon Jovi now. He's sounding pretty rough live lately. Vince Neil, same thing. David Lee Roth.
Cut the feed now.
Yeah, it just is what it is. But in regards to their age, I think he sounds great. I think to me it was just that there were no real hooks that stuck. Like there were no real memorable like vocal melodies that like stick in your head after. Like when you listen to like Come Sail Away or like Renegade, things like that, the hooks are really good. Like they stick with you for a while. Even like Too Much Time on My Hands, things like that. Let's even look at Mr. Roboto. And I feel like for me that was missing from this album. Like there really wasn't any songs that got stuck in my head afterwards. And I think that has to do with a lot of the lack of like vocal melodies in there. So I don't know if it was so much the actual vocals themselves, which they probably back in the day could have pushed themselves a little more. I think it was more of the no like real catchy hooks in there, which I think goes towards that progressive rock sound they were going for. When you listen to progressive rock, there's really not many catchy hooks in there. But the minor criticism there, I think overall it was pretty solid vocally.
Yeah, same. I agree with you on that. So any other like just overall generic feelings, thoughts about? I mean, we already went through the track listing. Any overall takeaways from the record before we rate it or whatnot, or what are you guys thinking?
Mike, you want to take this first, or you want me to go?
Yeah, sure. I think my overall takeaway from this album, I felt a political. I think the world around us. It's 2001. I mean, every album at this time is affected by the pandemic, or I think politics that are going on that are causing some stuff in the world and save us from ourselves. Talking about, just kind of like the whole sound the alarm, and just kind of like overall, I feel there was definitely this idea that we were divided. We're a divided nation. We're kind of struggling with this and that, and the stuff that was going on at the time. So I think this album is definitely a reflection of that. It's definitely a hopeful voice out of a possible. It could have been a much more dismal voice, like we're all kind of screwed. In a lot of the ways, I felt like he was just kind of like, we need a miracle. Some of the parts he was saying in the song. This is the fight of our lives. We've got to come back, and there's this monster basically, and it's just like the whole thing just screams like we're searching for the answer to get out of the hole we're in. And I think that's it's always a hopeful message. It's a good hopeful feel to it. So other than that, it was a solid album, and good to see them. The boys are still be able to, not phone one in, and just kind of like, hey, who cares? Like, stamp our name on it and just like done. Like they put some work into this. They thought it through, and I'm sure in 2021 they were still struggling to, get together and whatever. So, yeah, overall that's how I was feeling on that.
Kyle?
Yeah, so my final thoughts don't really differ too much from Mike's. I agree with the overall message. When you're listening to it, you definitely do get those political vibes, even though it's not directly talking about that in the lyrics. You can see where they're going with it. I will say with this album that I thought the guitars really shined, even if they weren't like the hard rock guitar, even like the acoustic parts I thought were done very well. And the album definitely feels inspired. It doesn't feel, like Mike said, it doesn't feel like someone just threw some songs together and was like, yeah, our fans will buy it. We've been around for decades. No, it does feel like they really wanted to put something out that they were proud of. And I think that they did a good job with it. I personally don't think the album it's not for me. It's not like something that I'm probably going to go back and listen to very often. Towards the end of the album, I don't know if it's because of, like Mike brought up, yeah, there's different input on there. I did towards the end of it start to be like, all right, let's wrap it up a little bit. I'm pretty done with it. But I mean, overall, I think it's very well done. I did think a lot of it may have blended together at points, but like I mentioned earlier, none of the songs overstayed their welcome. They all have a good like shelf life, I guess. The songs, like, they don't sit there and meander on and on, like, not to drag the album again, but like we talked about last week with Def Leppard on their last album, the songs just kept going with no real direction and just kind of went on and on, just repeating verse, chorus, 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 chorus. They actually went somewhere with this, which I appreciate. One thing you can always say about Styx is they're fantastic songwriters. I mean, they always have been. And that goes back to almost any of the members, really. They sound as great as you would expect. And my comments earlier about them, like the Beatles, Rush, and Pink Floyd vibes, those aren't bad things. I think it's just interesting to see. I feel like those influences may have come out more than usual on this record. And for me, I know Mike is a very much fan of that medieval vibe, like the Kings and Dragons, which I'm a big fan of theatrics and music as well. That's just not my thing. Like, Mike will tell you, Mike wants to kill me all the time. I'm not a fan of Lord of the Rings or anything like that.
What?
Can't get into it. Same thing with Game of Thrones. That whole medieval thing is just not my style. So they kind of lost me personally on that. But really, I can recognize when music is good, even if I don't personally care for it much. And I think this album is definitely a good album.
Yeah. Just in my own concluding thoughts, I mean, you guys pretty much hit the nail on the head. I'm just going to repeat some of the things that you both just said, because we're on the same page pretty much. As far as, like, Mike was mentioning, like the some of the lyrics, some of the title, even some of the political climate that's going on. It was released last year in 2021. I mean, with titles like "The Fight of Our Lives" and "Hold Back the Darkness," I mean, there's definitely some, like, I would say that there's definitely some pandemic-y, like not directly, but just like, hey, we want to touch on this in our own way type of thing, in our own songwriting way. Even "Sound the Alarm," like, that's one of those, I guess, that stood out to me as well. But I would say, I mean, bottom line, if you're looking for a new record by an older band, check out this one, Crash of the Crown. I mean, Styx has been good. This is what they said. This is their 17th studio album that they've done so far. And I mean, I agree with what Kyle said pretty much. Is like, where if you're looking for, I don't think they phoned this weirdly. I feel like Def Leppard phoned in their last recording that we talked about with Diamond Star Halos. That was just weird, trippy decisions. Yeah, Mike's giving the thumbs down. No way. Two thumbs down for Def Leppard. This feels like they actually did they put in some work. They did definitely put in some definite They put a lot of thought into this. I felt like they did, which I would think that, you know, for a band that's been going so long, since what, like 1970, almost 50 years now, since 1971 or two. So for doing it like this good for this long, I think that this is something that, would I go back to it frequently? Probably not. I tend to lean more with Kyle on that aspect. And just on a side note, Kyle, I'm not ever. I hate to, Mike. I hate to burst your bubble. I mean, I like some medieval stuff. Like, I just can't get into a lot of it. So, like, but like as far as Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones goes, so I got to agree with you on that. So sorry, Mike, if I have to disappoint you with Lord of the Rings. So just saying. Just want to
That's
put that
okay.
out. Yeah, I'm not like. I mean, I like it. I'm not like the biggest fan of that type of stuff, but I mean, if it's on, I'll watch it. Or if it's something like sounds like it, I'll listen to it. But you know, that's me. But yeah, no. Overall, I definitely if you like Styx, you're gonna like this record. If not, check it out anyways and interpret it as you will. How would you guys rate out of 5, if I'm not mistaken? How would you rate this album out of 5? Because we're doing 5, correct?
Yeah.
All right, Mike, out of 5, what do you got?
3.5, a possible 4 if
Okay.
I listen to it many more times, but I think 3.5 sounds about good. Is it an album I'm going to return back to? You know, there's a couple songs in there, like Kyle said, go into my rotation as a whole piece of work. You know, actually that Monster song, to be honest with you, I gained a different type of enjoyment out of some songs, almost like they're I like the environment they create. And here we go again with the environment. They create a good atmosphere. Some of the keyboards kind of coming around in the background and the progressive feel to it. That song I actually did enjoy, just kind of chilling out and laying back and kind of listening to that song, and it grew on me. But yeah, I would say obviously, yeah, it's an album I would say is a decent album and it's solid, and yeah, 3.5 is probably where I'm sitting on it, with a possible, or if as time went by, but yeah, for now leave it at that.
Kyle, what do you got?
I'm actually in agreement for the most part. I also would give it a solid 3.5. I don't think it would change from that for me though. Really, just because, like I said, it's not for me. But when I look at it as a whole, you know, work of art in terms of songwriting, all of that, I do think it's very, very well done for what it is. Definitely 3.5. Again, I think a lot of the songs are songs that work better in context of the album. I don't think there's many like, oh, I'm going to go pick out this song to randomly go listen to. I think that it is one of the albums that you should listen to front to back if you're going to listen to it. And I want to say that if this is how older bands should do it, this is what I want from legacy bands. I still want them to sound like themselves. I don't want them to try to reinvent the wheel. I don't need them to try to be modern or cool or do whatever some of these legacy artists are doing. I think this is the way to do it. And as a result, definite strong 3.5.
Well, gentlemen, we've come to an agreement. I would definitely say definitely 3.5 out of 10 out of 10 out of 5 for me. Sorry, they're going to 10. 3.5 what? It's too low. No, 3.5 out of 5 for me as well. It definitely it hit some notes for me. Did hit all the notes that I wanted it to. Not quite, but overall, it's still enjoyable. Still a very, you know, well-rounded. You know, as we said before, you could tell that they put their time into it. They definitely put like some good thought into it. And they and again, I'm seeing them later this year on their live and unzoomed tour with Aria Speedwagon and Loverboy, which should be very fun. I'm super excited to see them live. And who knows, they might play some songs off this album live when I see them. So we'll have to wait and see, of course, for that. But any other last minute thoughts on the album, gentlemen, at all? Or are we good?
I think pretty much, yeah. I think it's nice. I just look forward to the future of the releases, and you know, see what they come up with next, and maybe Mr. Roboto #2. I don't know. Who knows? You know, it's gonna be, maybe that'll make you guys happy. No more medieval, robotic universe.
Mr. Roboto 2.0 coming
2.0.
2023. There we go. The first thing of the new
I would not
album.
argue with it. I'll take it.
Charting on the Hot 100 at number 85.
One of those rare people that is actually a fan of that style. So
I am too. I actually was talking to a coworker who I'm not going to name because I told him to watch the videos. And he was saying he watched I've been kind of sharing them, and he mentioned that the other member who left in the 2000s, can't remember his name, all of a sudden brain rot. He basically took them in a direction during the time, like the shift of music at the time towards that more modern. We were talking about this with certain bands, and just kind of like, shifting into a certain direction that's happening. And I actually really enjoyed that song and some of the other songs that he wrote. And I think his lack of input on this album could have made, like you guys said, all one type of sound without that juxtaposition that he could bring. Dennis DeYoung, who was his name, now that it comes back to me, hit that juxtaposition, that kind of yin and yang that makes an album really feel like it doesn't get too stale and too similar, like you were saying, similar melodies, similar feeling. That similar feeling could become real evident, and almost like someone who is really trying to compensate for a lack of input could really feel overwhelmed and have to deliver on their side too much to a point where it kind of alienates certain listeners.
Kyle, any last minute stuff?
My last closing point here would be something that I'm surprised we haven't brought up sooner. It's a great album cover.
Oh yeah.
I love the album artwork for this album. Very well done. Very, very well done on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, looks awesome. Well,
trippy.
There's a little trippy. There you go. Just a tad bit. Well, honestly, you guys pretty much covered everything that I would say too. And you're right there. The album cover is pretty awesome. It looks like an eye staring into the soul of everyone. There you go.
Yep.
So, but on that note, I want to thank the two fine gentlemen who join me as always every week moving forward as well. I want to thank Kyle for doing this as always from the very beginning. Thank you so much for thanks for doing this as always.
Of course.
And Mike, second week in a row, man. First week was Def Leppard. Now we got Styx. We're gonna figure out what to do next week. But Mike, thank you so much for doing this as always with us. That's
hey, I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun, man. I'm looking forward to more review.
Awesome. We want to thank you for watching and listening. However, you enjoyed us tonight. So tune in next week for another episode of Career Retrospectives on our YouTube channel. If you haven't already, click subscribe on our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify podcast. And we will see you guys next time. So stay safe, man. Take care.